Welcome to Growth Series, a place to talk, explore, and question all the ways we as humans heal and understand inner work. I'm your host, Julija. A heartbeat behind growth is grace. Join me as I talk to some of the most devoted and passionate souls within the wellness space who have dedicated their life in helping us to navigate this multifaceted journey within. So keep your heart and mind open. Always trust your inner compass, and may you grow in grace. Hey guys, Julija here with another Growth Series podcast episode, and today's topic is one I've been meaning to dive deeper into for a really long time, so I'm incredibly excited to share this episode with you. And it's a topic that I personally have been really curious about and just intrigued and fascinated by, and that is emotions, but more specifically, emotional repression work and how it can liberate us from suffering and just open us towards life filled with authentic expression, freedom from past conditioning, and just freedom in our body. To me, emotions have been a somewhat ambiguous and mysterious concept that resides in a paradigm that I never dared to explore, but I recognized as an essential element of my being, of my human experience. It's only last year that I came across killer bee inquiries. It's a modality of somatic inquiry tools designed to reverse emotional repression and energies in our body, which then ultimately end our suffering in a natural way. I had a chance to connect with one of their wonderful facilitators after experiencing an emotional outburst like never before. I had an eruption that felt both really intimidating but equally unburdening for my body, as I never allowed myself to express emotions such as anger. I didn't even allow myself to feel angry. So it goes without saying that for the first time I realized just how much I've been repressing the natural flow of emotions and energies, and that it's time to uncover the root of this unconscious repression. So today I sit down with Serena Senteshi, a Killer Bee Inquiries trainer and facilitator, talking about the significance of emotions and the role they play in our overall health, when and why we start to repress our emotions, and how it then affects our physical health and relationships to others and relationship to ourselves. We also talk more about the source of suffering and the concept of self-love. We obviously dive deeper into the Killer Bee Inquiries method and how this modality transformed Serena's life, as well as lives of the many people she has worked with. So I really hope you enjoy this episode as much as I have. And as always, I'm sending you lots and lots and lots of love. Hi, Serena.
Hi, Julija.
It is such a joy to have you on the third episode of Growth Series podcast. I am a real fan of your work, and I'm a real fan of emotional repression work as well. So it's such joy to have your voice and your presence today.
Thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure for me to just meet you and talk with you about this work.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I always want to talk to people that have walked the talk. And I know that you have gone through your own personal journey with emotions, emotional repression work. And I know that you have transformed your own life really with this type of work. So I always am keen to talk to people like that can actually share the gifts and their own personal wisdom and findings from having done the work.
Yeah.
So to start with, I would really, really love to hear your story. What emotional repression work meant to you, how your life was before that and after that, and what has triggered that sort of work, and how did you find it?
Yeah, that's something that I really like to talk about because it usually inspires people to get curious about this work.
Yeah.
So almost like 4 years ago, I met Scott Kiloby, the co-creator of this method, the Kiloby Inquiries. And the reason for that was that I was in really bad conditions. Like I had a lot of mental health problems, physical issues, colitis, and a lot of excruciating pain in the
Mm.
body. And I guess a lot of psychosomatic symptoms also because of the body. And the reason for that was now I can see, back then I couldn't see that the reason for that was a lot of unprocessed trauma in my body mind. And that created a lot of chronic anxiety in my body that was creating the mental health problems like
Mm.
ADHD, CPTSD, and a lot of symptoms. Like I felt always anxious. And by the time I met Scott, I couldn't really speak with him like without struggling to find the words what I wanted to say to him because the anxiety and the pain in the body because of the colitis, it was just so excruciating and intense that I
Mm.
couldn't really speak with him clearly. So we just took it easy. He started to show me the tools of the Kilo inquiries of this somatic processing method that works
Yeah.
with emotions and the body, basically. And so when he started to show me the tools, I immediately felt relief in the pain. So just imagine that the pain was like on a 10 scale, it was like 10 strong or 1,000 strong. It was really
Yeah.
strong, you know?
Yeah.
It was so strong that before I met Scott, I was thinking actually like killing myself, you know, like I just wanted to die at that point before I
Yeah.
met Scott because I couldn't deal with the pain anymore and nothing really could help anymore with the pain, the steroids or the painkillers. So I tried a lot of things before
Mm.
meeting Scott and actually learning KI and started to dive into this method.
Yeah.
A lot of therapies, a lot of somatic approaches, and just a lot of stuff, you know, to get better because I wanted to feel better,
Yeah.
but I couldn't, you know. So with those modalities, they really helped to some degree, and they gave me an understanding about my programming, conditioning, traumas, what was happening in me. But I
Yeah.
couldn't really go to the root of that suffering and pain that was happening in my system, in my
Yeah.
body, you know?
Yeah.
So I only noticed the symptoms, what was happening in my life, you know, like financial issues, physical health issues, relationship issues. 4 years ago, I couldn't even like meet people anymore because I was that stressed out, that I was that anxious, you know. Just
Mm.
the thought of meeting someone created a lot of anxiety in my system. And so by the time I met Scott, I was just so exhausted emotionally, psychologically, physically, you know,
Yeah.
I dealt with a lot of stuff in my body. And so for me, KI was such a relief to
Mm.
finally be able to go to the root of that strong energetic pain and repression in my body that was that I developed since childhood, basically.
Yeah. So it was your physical body that actually kept on showing you and giving those symptoms and those signals that, led you to then discovering this work, right?
Yes, the suffering that I couldn't get out of
Yes.
suffering anymore. I think
Yeah.
that was the experience, if I could describe it.
Yeah. But how did you know that it's emotional repression? You know, how did you realize that it must be these energies that are suppressed in the body? Because, a lot of people will carry on treating the physical and not really turning inwards. At one point, did you realize, oh, the source is actually all the stuff that I haven't processed and embodied and integrated that's now causing all these physical symptoms?
Yeah, I actually didn't know that it was emotional repression. I had to meet Scott and talk with him to realize
Yeah.
that emotional repression and it's rooted in childhood. And
Mm.
I had no clue about that. I guess also because I come from a meditation background, Advaita background, conscious presence background, like all these spiritual practices, you know.
Yeah.
And so my thinking was unconsciously, I guess, in the background that I'm sitting here. I mean, those 12 years, during those 12 years of meditation practices, my approach was, I thought that my approach was to allow everything that was happening within me, to connect with my
Right.
inner body and to
Yes.
allow presence in my body mind, and just, trying to allow everything. So I thought that I was in an allowing approach and space within
Mm-hmm.
myself.
Mm-hmm.
But what I couldn't see, that I was unconsciously resisting feeling the emotions and the pain in the body, the contraction
Right.
in the body
Yeah.
that got created because of the emotional repression that was hitting
Yes.
the body. So all of that unconscious resistance that was there in my experience, but I couldn't see it because it was unconscious. I couldn't see it. So I
Mm.
really wanted to be gentle with myself. I really wanted to heal and all those things, that comes
Yes.
when you are in pain and when you are anxious, So you want to give it to yourself. And I
Mm.
also wanted to give it to myself.
Yeah.
Somehow I couldn't see the unconscious resistance and the unconscious, unprocessed stuff that was creating the pain in my body and the contraction in my body and the discomfort and the anxiety in my body. So then I
Right.
met, and I remember our first conversation. I was talking about the symptoms that I had. I was like saying to him, like, it's very good that we meet today, because yesterday I was on the edge of this pain and everything, and I was just thinking about killing myself the next day. So I'm very happy that I met you, because now I have some hope. And so when we
Yeah.
started to talk, I described my condition and my pain and my past to him, and
Mm.
he said like, oh, maybe you're like me. Maybe you also repress your anger. And I
Mm.
was like, my anger, but emotion, like that was a new thing,
Yeah.
And I was saying to him, my anger, no, I'm never angry. I'm just not that angry type of person.
Yep.
I was to him, and he said like, oh, there you go. Are you hearing what you're saying? Do you hear what you just said? And I'm like, what? Like, and it dawned on me like, oh, I'm never angry. I never feel angry. I'm not that type of angry person. And
Mm.
like, I never feel angry. And it dawned on me. So the repression already started to show up in
Yeah.
my awareness. Like, I never feel angry. So I had the first clue of how emotional repression um, mechanism
Operate.
runs in the body, like
Yeah.
it's unconscious. Because
Yeah.
before the conversation, I didn't know that I was repressing anger.
Yes.
Then I had the first glimpse, and I could see that, oh my God, I'm repressing anger and my power that much that
Mm.
it's not even coming up in my experience for decades, And so
Mm.
then we started to work together. We became friends and colleagues also over time. So I really went deep in the work because I really enjoyed that. I felt better,
Yeah,
by
of course.
going into this pain and processing what was
Yeah.
coming up from there. And so then I could see, because anger is my dominant repression. Like it was really taboo in my family. Like like hurt was okay, being the victim was okay, shame was okay, even guilt was okay, but
Mm.
anger and
Mm.
and power, like being who you are, saying what you want,
Yeah.
and expressing femininity, sexuality, like all these extrovert emotions, through
Mm.
which you can just express yourself. It was like really repressed in my family. So I
Yeah.
really had to stay small as a kid,
Yes.
especially the anger. I couldn't express it. And so we started to do the work. And the main point of this work is that it helps you to make the unconscious conscious. So maybe you can see, I could also see to some degree that anger is repressed in my body because I can't feel it. I couldn't feel it. So it was like, if it's not repressed, I can feel it, but I couldn't feel it.
Mm.
Yes. So we started to bring up all those unconscious
Yeah.
thought processes that were linked directly to the anger, but I couldn't see it. And all those memories started to pop up in my awareness as we were
Yeah.
doing the inquiries and the processing, that I think I was like around 3 years old when I had the first experience at the time that I expressed the anger in front of my mom, and then she turned away from me. And she said something like, just so unconsciously, like, oh, you're so angry, I don't like it. I'll come back to you once you calm down. Something like, this usual
Yeah,
shit,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
reaction.
yeah. Yep.
And I remember I was so young. I didn't even know that it was anger. It was just energy. I was like upset, crying in the same time, and something like this.
Yes.
And throwing a tantrum out there. And I remember her reaction made me freeze,
Mm.
like, and I remember this feeling, like this freeze, like, oh my God, I'm losing mom now. But I
Yeah,
need my mom. I need her.
yeah,
I need her
yeah.
love. I have to be taken care of. I depend on her. But I felt this freeze, like, oh my God, I expressed it. She saw it. And now I lost mom. I'm
Yes.
scared, very scary feelings.
Mm.
And so I remembered as we started to bring up all this unconscious repression around the anger, that after this first incident with mom, every time when the anger showed up in my experience, I felt the same feeling, this frozen fear or
Mm.
something like this. And I was looking around, this feeling, right? When you express something and then you look at people, like if they saw what you said or
Yes,
what you
yes,
expressed.
yes, yes, yes,
Yeah. Yes.
yes.
So this experience became repeated over time. That every time when I felt the anger, I was like looking around and I was like, there was like an unconscious command, like, shut it down, don't show it. Shut
Yeah,
it down, don't show it. So you are safe, so you don't lose people, like that was the experience. And over decades, and as I was growing up, it became a part of my personality, like
mm,
not feeling, showing, and expressing anger. I was
yeah,
just always nice instead of expressing the anger, to make sure that I don't lose people and I will be taken care of and loved, etc., by people. Because there was a deep fear that I will lose people or they will attack me or something like this, if I express the anger and I
yeah.
didn't want to get hurt. So over decades, it just built up in my system more and more, deeper and deeper.
And it became truth in your mind. It became truth of who you are. It became a part of
Yes,
your identity in a way, right? We
yeah,
press it so much that you grow up and you're like, well, it's just the person that I am. So
yes,
we kind
it's
of
a huge
brainwash
point.
ourselves. Hmm.
Yes, thank you. That's a very important point. I'm happy that you brought it up because so the nature of emotional repression, that it's unconscious. And for me, that was the experience too, that after a while, I just forgot about mom and the fear of being alone, everything, all the
Yeah.
trauma, I just
Yeah.
forgot about that. And it just became my personality, my behavior, like
Yeah.
dancing around the anger, so to speak,
Mm.
just not expressing it, people pleasing. You could literally punch me in the face and I would say, it's okay, let's talk about that. Like that type of anger repression, that you're just always nice. So that was my conditioning also, just always
Yes,
be
the same.
peaceful,
Yeah.
nice. And
Mm.
then after 34 years, I was surprised that I have chronic pain in the body, in my stomach, colitis, very strong pain, suffering, anxiety, cannot express myself, cannot connect with people. And
Mm.
I was like, it was an unconscious thought. The problem is with the body.
Mm.
No, it's not the
Yeah.
body. The body is innocent, and my body was innocent. It's
Mm.
the emotional repression, like these decades of pushing it down, pushing the energy of the anger and my power down. I always had like throat ache, like I always got cold, lung problems, stomach
Interesting.
problems, because
Yeah.
I was pressing that energy for
The
decades.
voice. Yeah.
Yeah. And you
Mm.
can imagine if you repress an energy, a natural energy that is yours in your body, that flows through your body, an
Mm.
emotion like anger or power,
Mm.
or just your natural quality and expressing it. If you hold it back and if you repress it and push it down, it has to create some symptoms. It would
It
be
has to
weird
go
if it
somewhere.
doesn't. Yeah,
Yeah.
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 Like stuffing it into the stomach, for example, again and again and again, every time when I felt angry or I wanted to say something, but instead of expressing it, I was pushing it down so unconsciously. It was
Yeah.
just it became automatic,
Yeah.
something like this. That became the normal. Resisting anger, pushing it down, being anxious, but on the surface, being nice, that became my normal.
Yeah. Serena, tell me why do people start repressing emotions? When does it start and why does it start?
So, what I see from my experience and working with many people, the reason is usually what I see is that it starts in early childhood and primarily with mom and dad, with our parents and or the primary caregivers.
Yeah.
And the reason why is there's a very good reason for this is as you could see it in my case, it's safety. Like
Mm.
for a child, safety is everything. Like needing mom and dad and getting love, connection, protection, safety, acceptance from mom. Like the basic needs that a child needs, it has to be met. And it's
Yeah.
so automatic in the child that we do everything to get those from our parents.
Yeah.
Very often, if not always to some degree, we have to repress something, some aspects within ourselves to be accepted, loved, protected by our parents,
Yeah.
be
Yeah.
taken care of by them. Because if mom, like for example, mom or dad, if they can't experience and receive their own anger or hurt or sadness or different emotional energies within themselves, they they most likely will push it down in you too in different ways, like
Mm.
maybe just sending the message with a bad look, like I don't
Mm.
like it, it's not welcomed here, like those silent energetic messages
And
when
children are so receptive to, right?
yeah,
Even if it's not direct. Because it's funny because I'm with my little niece and nephew. My niece, she's 2.5, and my nephew is just turned 1. So I'm helping my sister look after them at the moment. And I notice how children are so reactive and so receptive to the tiniest, most subtle looks,
yeah,
grin, even turn of the head, movement of the body of the adult. They straight away receive it, interpret, and decide, is this gonna bring me safety? Is this good? Is this, or is it dangerous?
problem.
Or is it a problem?
Yeah.
And according to that, they shift and change, and it's just incredible to observe.
Yes, this this face on the children when they express something and then they look at the parents, am I in trouble, like
Yeah.
this face, am I in trouble now?
Yeah.
So yeah, I
So
can
what are the most common emotions that I guess adults slash children repress?
yeah, so what I see working with many people, that it's either anger and power, like anger as the dominant
Mhm.
repression, and like power and femininity, masculinity, sexuality under that, creativity, But the leader of that primary repression, those extrovert emotions, is anger. So it's either
Mm.
anger or hurt, like vulnerability,
Mm.
like introvert emotions. That's what I
Yeah.
see, that people either repress anger and all those extrovert emotions under the anger, or vulnerability and hurt and all those introvert emotions. On the circumstances they grew up in, what kind of conditionings they received from the parents, or what was allowed in the family, what wasn't allowed in the family. So it's
Mm.
kind of like we receive this conditioning through the parents somehow.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember someone told me once that anger is a buffer for pain slash hurt. And when you think about it, it is it is very hurtful to not be able to express that you're hurt, that you're
Yeah.
in pain. that you felt, for example, rejection. And then anger is sort of like a natural byproduct or continuation of that emotion that hasn't been met, with presence. So if I'm, as a little girl, I was very hurt and very sad, and there was no one to witness me in that hurt and pain, it's going to make me angry.
Yes.
And then you go on and you're not even allowed to express then anger and you're being shamed for it. That adds another layer of that emotional neglect, I suppose.
Emotional neglect is a good word for that, I guess. And through the emotional neglect, we also learn how to neglect our own emotions, our
Mm,
bodies that we feel. And it makes a lot of sense, what you are saying, because I'm primarily an anger repressor, but I strongly repress vulnerability and hurt under that, if it makes
right.
sense.
Yes.
Because I was always angry with my mom as a child, but I couldn't express it. But I was angry because I was so hurt by her, by what she was doing and saying and repressing me or oppressing me.
Mm,
And so what I see with hurt repressors, it's exactly what you just shared, that there is this deep pain, hurt, vulnerability of not being met, not being seen, and just being really hurt. So on the surface, because of this unexpressed hurt, they always angry. They always angry, they always express themselves, they go into fight, they always have to win, they are just strong on the surface because they are so deeply hurt and in
mm,
pain under
mm,
that.
yeah.
While anger repressors are quite the opposite, that there is the anger, and on the surface, we are always hurt. We want to feel mad and we feel vulnerable, and we show this, believing that we are going to get people's
Yeah.
attention by that.
Mm,
Or being the victims, like being the victim of our own emotions because our power and anger are just so deeply repressed. So it's
yeah.
quite the opposite, and it's all connected. It's not that we just repress anger or hurt. It's all connected and everything is kind of repressed to some degree, because they are not in our total, complete freedom.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's either like hurt or anger and suffering that
Yeah.
repression. You know the feeling when you are just so angry at someone, you are in fight, but what you actually want to say that I just need a fucking hug, just hug me.
Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
angry because you just want a hug
Yep.
and you want to feel mad and held or something like this.
Totally. Totally. Yep. Yeah. I know that feeling. I guess we all do to a degree. Serena, what is like? It might sound a bit silly, and we spoke about it before we started recording, but I think a lot of people don't quite even understand what emotion is. And for a long time, I thought that, well, emotion is a feeling, and I know how I feel when I'm angry. So this is an anger emotion. Then I know when I'm happy. But emotions is something a little bit more deeper and more subconscious and more primordial, right? Whereas a feeling is maybe a slightly different texture again. So, what is actually an emotion? How do I recognize it? What's the nature
Well,
of it?
yeah, it depends on the person, but I can respond from my experience. For me, emotion is energy. It's just
Mhm.
energy. After doing a lot of repression work on myself, I don't, in my experience, I don't really name them anymore. Like this is joy, this is anger.
Mhm.
They are more like qualities for me at this point after
Mhm.
really working with the repression on the emotions. So for me, emotions are different energies in the body. Like joy, feeling joy, energy of joy is a different feeling, or feeling the energy of anger or happiness or sadness or fear. They all are like different energies for me, and they
Mhm.
feel different in my body. And yeah, that's how I could describe the best.
Mhm.
Makes sense. And now I don't have a lot of problem with those energies in my body.
Yeah.
And I love when it flows, when there is nothing stops the energy of those emotions and I can just express myself. But also, what I wanted to say that we have these energies in our bodies, like these emotional energies, and these energies are quite beautiful, when they are not repressed or when we don't resist them unconsciously. Even anger is like a beautiful feeling, like just animalistic rage, like wow, or something like this, like, or even setting a boundary with someone, like, don't talk to me like this. And then you express the anger and then it's gone. There is no thinking around that anymore. If you do emotional repression work, you have this result that you just express something and then it's gone and the story ends. The
Yes.
energy gets expressed and then the story finished there. You're not thinking about that, like, oh, how is she going to respond? Is she still my friend after that? Or something like this, You just express those energies and they are equally feel okay in the body, mind, in the body to feel and express those emotional energies. So they are a part of the experience and they
Yes.
also get triggered by different experiences like fear, anger, joy, shame sometimes, like, but if there is no repression or not much repression, aka unconscious resistance towards the emotion, they don't linger in the body for a long time, generating a lot of thoughts. This experience when you have a fight with someone and then sometimes for days you think about the situation,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. And the anger or the hurt is still in place, stuck in the body, and you keep thinking about that person. I should have said him, like,
Yeah.
it's his fault, but I didn't. And like
Yeah.
yourself, like, like
It's
something.
interesting because you can tell that you haven't fully allowed the energy to flow because you end up that energy that didn't get expressed in the moment, you didn't respect your body's natural response and you didn't express it. And then where did that energy goes? Into your mind, right? You keep on thinking about it, you keep on ruminating for days. It's a very good indicator, I think, of something that was not expressed authentically or suppressed, because we then tend to fixate on it on a mental level and we think about it and we replay and we, yeah, and then we
The
get
scenario repeat.
anxieties. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. So actually, that's a good sign of repression, active repression, And it's good to talk about that because I think most of people, just as I couldn't see my own thoughts and feel, I didn't even know that I had thoughts and emotions, I was just identified with it, like having thoughts, thinking about people, thought processes around stuff, like my mind was always stuffed, and there was like contraction in the body and discomfort. So these are all signs of emotional repression, this
Mm.
suffering, just being caught up in the thoughts
Yeah.
or always like feeling contracted in the body. That's a good sign if there's contraction or discomfort or numbness or shutting down in the body, that there is something not allowed. And
Yes.
emotions are not allowed, like
Yeah.
emotions connected to different people and experiences. We shut them down or we contract around them or something like this. And then we go into thinking. So these are all signs of emotional repression.
Yeah.
If if you notice this during the day, then it's already very good, I think,
Yeah.
because that's the first step, I think, to notice that I'm thinking about something, all those images and words running in my mind,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
word contraction in the body. So that's the very first step. If someone gets curious about emotional repression, so that's the very first step that you learn to notice the thoughts, your own thoughts as words, pictures. These are thoughts,
Yeah.
sensations, emotions in the body.
Yeah.
And then you can already, because that's what can happen. That's what experience means,
Yeah.
like having thoughts and sensations in the body. So if
Yeah.
you can already, if you are at that stage that you can observe thoughts and sensations in the body, aka your experience, that's already very good. That's the very first step to
Yeah.
practice this, being this present awareness that's allowing and seeing these thoughts and
Yeah.
feelings of the body. That's the conscious part of the experience.
Yeah.
The very first step when you come to KI, somatic processing, that you learn and start to learn to observe those thoughts and sensations
Yeah.
in the body, the conscious experience.
But how is it different, Serena, then? Because obviously you said you come from years of practicing spiritual modalities and meditation and, maybe breath work, whatever, and really
All of
trying all of it.
it.
And because, in meditation and a lot of those teachings, New Age spirituality, they say, feel the things in the body, observe. In meditation, we allow everything to come and go without judging, etc., etc. But yet, so many spiritual, so-called, practitioners and people that try these modalities years after years still really struggle. And so, how is this somatic processing and somatic inquiry work, this emotional repression work, is different? Because in practice, it sounds like a very similar, like any spiritual practice. What happened? These things supposed to happen in meditation, but it doesn't quite hit the nail on the head. Um, the same way, like, for example, the work that you are doing does, or the work that you're sharing. So, what's the actual difference?
Yeah, I try to describe it in a simple way that with the spiritual practices and with different therapeutic modalities, I could see uh, and make conscious and understand what was happening in my conscious experience, like having thoughts or seeing that I'm frustrated with my boyfriend because I was also frustrated or had some issue with my dad, so I could link those dots between my present life and my past, like childhood life or when I was adolescent, and the conditioning of being an adolescent and child, and the conditioning with my parents, and I could see that it created some issues in my present life. So
Yeah.
with spirituality and presence practices and therapeutic modalities, I could link the dots between those things. But that was only the conscious experience that was
Yeah.
arising in my presence um, by itself, I didn't have to dig to put those things together or
Mm.
talk about those things with my therapist, for example,
Yeah.
or with spiritual practices to allow thoughts and sensations and call it an identity. Like that's the identity, having thoughts, sensations, that's not me. I'm awareness. This is just the
Mhm, mhm,
person,
mhm,
stuff, the
mhm.
identity with thoughts and feelings. So I could go only that far with these practices. But why KI is different? Because in my experience, after doing KI for 2 years, I remember sitting here and it just dawned on me like, oh my God, I thought that I was aware of my conditioning and programming fully because I was like conscious, like awareness practice was in my background. So I was like, I'm present to all of it. I'm conscious that my body mind is here, and I'm aware that I'm feeling something and thinking something. So
Mm.
that must be it, the full spectrum. And then after doing KI for 2 years, I was sitting here and I was like, oh, fuck. It just dawned on me, like that was like 10%, that was 10% of the conditioning
Yeah.
and the unconscious repression mechanism. Just as I described in the beginning, the anger repression was so deeply running unconsciously that even if I wanted to feel it, it didn't arise in my experience. And so KI is different in that way that with different somatic tools and emotional repression tools, we start to trigger and stir up the unconscious thought processes which makes us push down those emotions or not show those emotions in order to stay safe
Yeah.
and get what we need from people. That's like automatic for everyone, I think, like for the people who I know, I see that it's just automatic, just as it
Yeah.
was for
Yeah.
like it started in childhood, and we wanted to get love, attention, and protection from our parents because we felt deficient. For example, if I express my anger, I'm unlovable. That was the story. This was the deficiency story and identity for me. So I had to repress the anger so to get my needs met by my parents. And so I carried this conditioning into every relationships of mine. And so whenever I had a conflict with someone, I'm trying to describe it through an example.
Yeah, absolutely. Use your personal experience.
Yeah.
So good. Yeah.
Yeah, whenever I had a conflict with someone, I couldn't see that those unmet needs were running in my system. Like, I can't say what I want. I can't express my anger because I need him to feel safe and to get love,
Yep.
That's happening in my somewhat conscious experience, The unmet needs were running, made me repress my anger and myself, in order to stay safe with that person, to make sure they are there and taking care of me and loving me, So that was on the surface.
Yeah.
But what I couldn't see that it's not about the unmet needs and the fixation on the other person, this tension between me and the person. I thought it was creating the contraction and the tension in my body. But actually, after doing a lot of emotional repression work, I could see that it's all connected to the emotion in the body, the repressed emotion in the body. And that's connected to my mom and dad, that I couldn't express them, that I'm fucking angry that you don't love me if I am myself,
Yeah.
Or in different situations. Instead of expressing the anger, I started to be nice, So they didn't see my anger and they still took care of me and loved me, for repressing my anger. So in different situations with my parents, as a very little kid, I couldn't express my emotion as anger and hurt because I was really hurt that they didn't accept me and that they even abused me, in situations. So there was this anger and hurt and the fear of expressing that because I didn't want to feel neglected and attacked by them, all these emotions were there, repressed even as a child in order to get my needs met, And so I carried this conditioning. On the surface, I could somewhat see that the unmet needs and the connection and the tension, but what I couldn't see was the emotional part because it wasn't arising into my conscious experience. This deep energy repression, that it's not about the unmet needs and that I need that person to love me. It's that I cannot express my anger, hurt, and fear to them authentically, or I couldn't even access it in my body. So in that way, KI is different, that it brings you through the emotional repression work, it brings you from this somewhat conscious programming and tension that you have with people and with yourself. It brings you to the root of that issue that's generating the relationship problems and issues and different things in your life, like problems, that it's deeply rooted energetic repression in the body of our childhood traumas with mom and dad. And a lot of modalities and therapeutic approaches, they stop at that level or at that point when they start to uncover the unmet needs, That's why in somatic and different therapeutic approaches, because I also come from this background, we put a lot of emphasis on hearing people, meeting their needs, like so that they feel loved, seen, so they can open up. And that's really fucking important part of this work, to give it to people, because we don't have this experience, So we can start to have this experience. So that's a very important stage in the healing path or something, that we to experience that so we can open up. But it's just not healthy to stop there. With those modalities, it wasn't healthy for me to stop there and just keep getting my unmet needs met, because it cannot be fulfilled. because it's coming from this experience and trauma that I am not seen, I'm unmet, I don't exist for them. I want to be loved and I'm not. So it's coming from this unfulfilled stuff or void within ourselves, you know?
Yeah.
So if we stop at that level or with those practices, after a while we have to face, just as I had to face, that it doesn't bring long-term satisfaction, freedom, and healing even from the symptoms, you know?
Yeah.
So under that stage and field, there is this, it's connected to the body, you know, deeply into the body, into
Yeah.
this expression that we
Yeah.
are trying to heal our wounds and our unmet needs, trying to get our needs met, you know, in this
Yeah.
field. But under that, there is this deep energetic repression that I fucking can't express my rage to my mom and my dad, or
Yeah.
my hurt, or that I'm afraid and I feel unsafe if you do that. It's
Yeah.
all stuff. Literally, mom and dad, they are buried in our bodies, you know, in a way, through
Mm.
those repressed emotions. So it's not the unmet needs and the deficiency. It's very good if you are conscious of that. It's needed for a while to just keep making it conscious, you know, and that
Mm.
finally you can connect with those parts within yourself. But if you don't link it to the repression in the body, the emotional repression in the body that's generating these unmet needs and trying to fulfill them and trying to make the relationship work through the unmet needs or whatever, you know, it's not going to bring
Yeah.
long-term results or permanent results because the root issue in the body, the energetic repression, isn't resolved yet.
Yeah. Yeah. That's why I'm so fascinated by this work, because I feel like it's a missing link to a lot of people's healing journey, because we might know a lot. We might become aware of a lot of things through therapy, for example, or through reading, or through, but like you said, until you link it to the very primary trauma that's been ingrained in your body, and primary trauma, it could be those unmet emotional needs and inability to express yourself, then we all always, like you said, gonna be seeking for solution through external sources and trying to get those needs met, like you said, but never really truly satisfying those needs, because they can't be met by anyone else anymore. Now it's you.
Yeah,
You have to
yeah.
become your own mom and dad in a way.
Yes. And for me, it was a very good experience when I could finally meet those parts that felt unmet, unloved, unseen. That was a huge step for me, this connection,
Yeah.
like a connection. Like, wow, I'm connecting with it, so I don't need anyone, or not just people, but I was also an addict, alcohol, drugs, sex, you know, all those things,
Mm.
trying to ease the pain, you know,
Yeah.
or the tension, you know, within myself. And I
Yeah.
had this repeated experience of using drugs, alcohol, and different things, you know, even people, you know, to ease my pain, you know, because of the unmet needs. So for me, it was also a very important experience that I could like finally, I felt integrated in that way. Like, okay, I'm meeting it, I'm feeling it. A lot of crying, like that was just so intimate, you know,
Mm.
to meet it. But then again, going to the anger, the repressed rage, anger, you know, this killing rage, and
Yeah.
and the innocence of that fear and threat and terror, you know,
Yep.
and hurt and vulnerability and accessing vulnerability through the repression work. So going to the root of those repressions and unpacking the emotions with the repression work, that was like, give me a time, I have to explain. Give me some time, I have to explain it in a correctly. It's very hard to describe sometimes these subtle experiences and intimate experiences that I have since I do the repression work. But
Yeah.
so as I went deeper, you know, into these repressed emotions in the body and kind of like reverse that repression, So those emotions started to come up, and I finally felt like I'm not 5 years old anymore, but I'm like a 37 old years old woman, like
Yep.
it just was like it was gone, like it went away from my experience as I
Mm.
reversed repression, like this 5 years old, like I need my mom, like and it's very good to connect with it, but also like if you really go to the root of that repression, that it also like resolves this, and you can be
Mm.
finally yourself, like your actual self, your actual age, so to speak.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, you get unstuck in a way.
Yes,
Because so
sometimes.
many, there's a saying that so many people walk around this world in grown-up bodies, but very much still stuck in childish conditionings and in childish behaviors and adult tantrums. And, you would think, oh, but you're a 45, 50-year-old man or woman. You should act your age. And, well, actually, how can you if that little child within is still is abandoned and running
You
the
cannot express
show,
anger,
running the
hurt, or
show.
fear.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And Serena, I really loved when you said that, and thank you so much for sharing so much of your personal experiences and trying to find the words to describe it. It's so, so invaluable. And I love when you said that emotions are actually so beautiful, all of them.
Yes.
Not a single one is neither negative or positive. It's just a natural expression of our being, of bodies,
Yeah.
um, our body's nature. And I want to ask you, I feel like a lot of people learn to label their emotions as bad or good. And then what it creates when we need to express or feel them, well, feel them, let alone express, then we think, oh, this is a negative. I feel outraged, for example, and this is a negative emotion, but it's only labeled as negative because we as adults don't know how to safely and authentically express it. And I think for me personally, like my experience has been that I was afraid of emotions because actually, when I was little, I felt things strongly, but I felt scary. It feels scary to have big emotions, to feel anger, to feel fear, for example, And when you don't know how to express it as a child, and there's no one to be present with you, then you grow up and you don't know how to deal with it. So you're kind of like, okay, this is bad. I'd rather just not feel it. And it can feel actually even somatically scary to feel sensations in the body. So people start having panic attacks and anxieties, and they have loads of mental issues because, when the body is numb and you don't allow your body to feel, like we talked about it, the energy has to go somewhere. So it ends up sometimes, most of the times, in your head.
Yeah, and it's also that the vagus nerve and the nervous system
Mm.
is directly connected with the body. It's like a network of um, it's like a net in the body, and but the repression is also in the body. So
Course.
this the nerves that runs through the body, it's very intelligent,
Mm.
it senses what's happening in your body. So for me also, whenever I felt the anger, I became nervous,
Yeah.
but the nerves sensed the anger energy in my body. I became nervous, so it's reasonable that over time we develop mental health issues, because whenever you feel the stuff that you don't want to feel, your nervous system reacts. And
Yeah.
just imagine, like for 3.5 decades, whenever I felt my power and anger, I get nervous. So over
Yeah.
time, I developed CPTSD,
Mm.
post-traumatic stress disorder,
Yeah.
like chronic anxiety,
Mm.
because it was all connected to my body and my
Yeah.
anger and my power.
Yeah.
So they are not like separate things. But the tricky thing with this is that the nervous system senses everything, not just what you are conscious of. Like, oh, to some degree, I know that I feel like hurt, but I don't want to feel it, So the nervous system senses that, but also there can be like other unconscious stuff that you feel, like trauma, or something reminds you of a trauma that happened with your dad, for example, or someone, the neighbor, or something, that
Yeah.
brought feelings into your body, like fear, for example. So those traumatic feelings can be there, hidden. You don't see it. It's unconscious, but the nervous system is still connected with it, because the nervous system is not in time. It's just connected with everything that you feel.
And it doesn't forget anything. It
Yeah.
doesn't forget anything. Yeah.
Yeah. And then you go to your therapist and say, like, oh, my childhood was so nice, and I have a nice life. I have a partner. I have money. don't really have issues in life, but I have OCD, for example, or I'm chronically depressed,
Yeah.
And then you wonder why, because you are not aware of what's buried in your body, but the nervous system is very intelligent. It's not in time, it's not in thinking, it just senses what's there in the body.
Yeah.
So it reacts, and we don't understand why we are sick, why we are depressed, why we have different issues,
Yeah.
because of the nervous system is giving a good sign, it's just that if the unconscious stuff don't get resolved in the body, then it's in the long term, it's having to carry those and having those reactions again and again in the
Yeah.
nervous system. And we can try to repress it, or try to balance it with different medications. And I think that's very useful also sometimes, or for a while, until we can go to the root of the
Yeah.
issue.
Yeah.
But in the long term, again, I don't think it can resolve this
Mm.
reaction, because it's connected to the unconscious repression in the body.
Yeah. Oh, this is so good. I love it all so much. So much.
Me too.
Gold. Absolutely gold. I love how emotional repression work is said to be a natural recovery from suffering modality. Natural recovery from suffering. Can you talk a bit more about suffering and how we as adults create our own suffering? And maybe what's the purpose of suffering? Maybe actually suffering for a little bit can actually bring us to something very beautiful in our life.
Yes, and it's such a contradiction in life, right? I also had to deeply suffer in order to meet Scott and finally start like deep somatic healing and processing, because I was denying that unconsciously for 3.5 decades, and I really had to suffer in order to heal. So it's such a contradiction in life, I guess. And yeah, I think, we named it natural recovery from suffering. That's the path of KI somatic processing, learning the tools, learning to self-facilitate, to bring those things up for yourself and to process them with different somatic tools. So that's the path, natural recovery from suffering. And we call it because I think that's the most impressive, or that expresses the most authentically how it feels to step on this path and go through this process.
Yeah.
Learning tools, facilitate yourself with those tools, and bring up the pain and the repression in the body, actually process them, and then feel better. Like it's gone and I'm okay. That
Yeah.
missing experience
Yeah.
of something happens, I'm upset, or something happens in my inner body, in my internal experience, and I can't get out of that. But if you learn somatic processing, then you can have the experience that something is coming up, there is a trigger. You can access now because you know the tools now, you learn the tools, you learned KI, you know the somatic processing part, you know how to bring it up. It's in your awareness, you know how to process that, and then it's gone. And then you feel okay. So that was a missing experience for me also, because my entire life, I just felt like I was just collecting stuff. Things happened and I
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
collect stuff,
Yeah.
but the
Yeah.
processing part, and that I can process and then it's gone, it was a missing experience.
Yeah.
And natural recovery from suffering, that's what we do, that we learn the tools and repeatedly go there to the root of the suffering that's creating the suffering. We talked about it already. And I think it's also naive to just say, like, we create our own suffering. My experience, it's completely true after doing a lot of emotional repression work, but I also understand that someone who just comes to the work can't see it yet, you know?
Yeah.
I actually have to suffer to get mom and dad's love. I have to repress my anger. I have to believe I'm unlovable in order to get their love and keep repressing the anger and suffering for their love and attention, you know? So after a while, if you do the work, you just understand, yeah, I'm doing it. I'm doing it. I'm pushing my
Mm.
anger down to
Mm.
get their love and be accepted, you know? Like I'm creating
Yeah.
this suffering. But until it's unconscious, as long as it's unconscious, you don't see it. So if someone tells you that, oh, you create your own suffering, they just say, go to hell, you know, like, I don't want to
Yeah.
suffer, you know, because I
Of
also didn't want
course.
to
Yeah.
suffer. That's why I
Yeah.
was like trying to find something. And after going deep into this unconscious repression in the body, I could see, like, oh my God, I'm doing it. And I actually want to suffer. I want to
Mm.
suffer. I
Mm.
want to stay in that suffering with mom and dad that's stuck in my body mind to feel safe.
Because it gives me something that I need.
Yes, and it's all
Yeah.
about safety.
Yeah.
We suffer in order to stay safe.
Yeah.
That's what I see repeatedly again and again with my clients and
Mm.
with my mentees, that we unpack this mechanism of deeply rooted suffering, you know, within ourselves in order to stay safe. If I
Yeah.
don't show my sexuality, then I can stay safe. I'm not going to get raped again by a man, you know, it's all unconscious. So I hide it, you know.
Mm.
But then I suffer because I have pain in my womb.
Mm.
That's just an
Mm.
example, you know.
Mm.
And
Mm.
then every month I have to go to the doctor. So I'm suffering, there is pain. But I unconsciously choose this suffering in order to stay safe because I don't want to feel and express my sexuality. I don't want to uncover the trauma I had with my dad who made me
Mm.
repress my sexuality because it wasn't safe to be
Mm.
a woman in my family. So it's
Yeah.
usually that. And it's again, emotion of sexuality is got repressed in my body. So I unconsciously choose this suffering of keep repressing it, not showing it to men, so I can stay safe because they don't see me. But if you do the emotional repression work, you make it conscious, you know, and then
Yeah.
you say, I'm doing it. I want to hide it.
Mm.
I want to hide it, not
Yeah.
someone else who is here around me. I'm sitting here, there is a man, and I want to hide it. I send a
Yeah.
message into my womb and into that
Mm.
sexual energy and femininity in my body. I have to hide it. I have to be ashamed of that so they don't see me and I'm safe. So it's all about safety. I'm suffering it. I'm in pain, but I choose to suffer because I prefer to stay safe.
Mm.
Experience, and from
Yeah.
that
Makes
man,
sense.
it's all unconscious. And we
Yeah.
don't even know if I expressed my sexuality, what what would happen, you know, if I expressed it, you know, we don't even know. It's just unconscious because of the childhood trauma around sexuality.
Yeah.
And I could bring many examples how we unconsciously like choose suffering, that type of repression and suffering in order to just stay safe. So suffering is always about safety, wanting to stay safe.
Mm. Wow, that's really powerful, Serena. Thank you so much. I
And it's
feel
very
like
empowering, right?
it
Like just
really
to feel that,
is.
like it's in my hand. Maybe I don't see it yet fully, but now I know that it's in my hand. I'm doing it. I can learn the tools and I can reverse that
Yeah.
mechanism of suffering, you
Yeah.
know. Maybe it's not clear yet, or the people who are listening to this conversation, maybe it's good news for them, you know.
Oh,
Also, maybe like,
absolutely.
oh,
Yeah.
okay, yeah, I'm also in pain. I'm also suffering. I don't want to suffer, but I'm still in pain and suffering. But now maybe I understand that I'm doing it unconsciously in order to stay safe. And there are
Absolutely.
tools
Yeah.
and there is a method that can help with this to go to
Yeah.
the root issue. And then I can open up my sexuality, my anger, my femininity,
Mm.
masculinity, joy, anger, hurt, whatever. And then
Mm.
I don't have to repress myself
Yeah.
and aka suffer anymore by repressing myself,
Yeah.
but I can like be free, something
Yeah.
like this.
That leads me very beautifully actually onto my next question, because it's kind of linked to that phrase, oh, we choose our own suffering. But I feel like that's where our journey to self-love, a real self-love begins. Because if we start to see ourselves as innocent children, all of us, not choosing deliberately to suffer or be this or be that, or it's just a child within us trying to, like you said, be safe and be loved and be accepted and be seen, and to give ourselves grace and compassion and forgiveness, and take that child by the hand, and then really truly learn to love that child and love ourselves. And I want to know what self-love means to you now, having been on the journey for many years,
Mm.
how the concept of self-love has changed for you.
I think the self-love and experience self-love was a huge turning point for me. When I started KI, because I didn't really know what self-love was. I could never really love myself just because of the nature of my traumas. The first 20 years of my life was about like domestic sexual, physical, emotional abuse. So of course, I just hated myself, you know. I didn't know that, but I was just hating myself all the time. So when I came to KI, and of course, I tried to love myself through those different practices, but I couldn't, to be honest, you know, because
Yeah.
it was running deeper than that, you know, than just trying to love myself. I had good moments before KI with this self-love thing, but not completely authentically. And so
Yeah.
when I came to KI, I remember during the first 3 months, I was doing the inquiries and the process from this unconscious place of self-hatred, you know, just trying to get rid of things. I could see
Yeah.
that the tools worked in my system, so I was also very enthusiastic, but I could see after a while that I'm doing it from this self-hatred, trying to get rid of myself in
Yeah.
order to be free and happy, you know, just get rid of the painful
Things that
stuff.
you don't like and
Yeah,
you could do
yeah.
without, maybe.
Yeah, I'm in pain. I don't want to feel it. So that's the type of unconscious resistance that we make conscious with KI also, because I also couldn't see, you know, and then I could see like, oh, I'm just trying to get rid of things. That's the resistance, you know,
Mm.
towards the experience. And after 3 months, I remember it's just spontaneously dawned on me. I could just see myself doing that, you know, and I was like, then I felt the self-love with that part actually that was doing it from this stuckness, trying to get rid of herself or something, you know. Oh my God. And I was just crying, and I felt so much compassion with myself because I could see what I went through that made me uh, behave with myself in that way, if you
Mm.
know what I mean. So I could just feel the pain just sitting there and just hating myself, trying to get rid of myself. And I just felt like very deep compassion, and I think the unconditional love, what we call unconditional love, there was just total acceptance, and my inquiry just shifted, you know, with this, and
Mm.
it didn't really come back after that. And from then on, I was just really curious about my experience. My inquiry completely shifted, and whatever came up for me or whatever I was working with and brought up with inquiry, I approached it with this love and curiosity, you know, and compassion or something like this. It's hard to put it into words. It just shifted in my experience. I could see that just trying to get rid of it, it just doesn't work. It comes from resistance, so it cannot work
Yeah.
eternal, you know? So from then on, I was just focusing on connecting with whatever was arising in my experience or
Mm.
whatever I brought up from the unconscious, you know, in my body mind. And I was curious and loving towards that, you
Yeah.
know. That's why I don't even like the term processing, because we use it a lot, like somatic processing, emotional processing. And for me, it sounds like, because of my own conditioning, like processing, getting rid of it or something, trying
Yeah,
to
yeah,
assimilate
I
it,
get it. Yeah.
So I
Mhm.
don't really like this word, but we
How
also
would
have
you
to
call
describe
it?
the,
How would you
but
call it? If you could call it, how would you call it to make it more authentic and accurate instead of
I would
emotional
just call it
processing?
emotional repression work. And
Mm.
the processing comes from deeply connecting and allowing those emotions and those parts and resistances within ourselves. Like learning to connect with the resistance, like this part that happened when I started KI, this self-hatred and stuckness, trying to get rid of myself. That's resistance, coming into my awareness. So connecting with that part and not judging it, not trying to process it, just really
Mm.
being open towards that resistance in the body that's doing it.
Yeah.
I don't want to feel it. I don't want to feel it. I don't want to feel it. That's resistance.
So would you say in more simplistic way, it's just allowing those energies that are stuck all over our physical body to be felt when they come up, to allow it to be all present and felt in the body, but remove the story that creates, but how to say it? I'm just trying to see if I understand it in a more simple way. It's kind of like not allowing our minds and that conditioning to create stories about the things that we feel in the body and how we express it in a way, because people that are unconscious to it, the mind creates story about things that we feel and not allowed to express. But when we are more conscious and aware of it, we can be present with it without allowing our mind to be like, okay, well, that means that you are this and that, and kind of like, does that make sense? Am I right?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense to me. What I would say is that if I could suggest anything, that don't just try to connect with emotions without the story. I think it's just not possible
Mm.
because we are just so unconscious. We are already identified with resistance, aka repression, like resisting our experience. So we
Mm.
already in that. I lived my life in shutdown and resistance, like
Yeah.
emotional shutdown.
Mm.
So it's something that we can't do. We can't just feel and allow emotions like, oh, now I listen to Serena, now I know what repression is, so I can just focus on feeling and allowing the emotions without stories. I don't think it's possible. What I would recommend is to, as a first step, because, if you say with KI, one of the basic tools is reverse inquiry, like a reverse statement. For example, if I say, that I feel anger in my body, or I feel sadness in my body, or fear, or whatever is arising in the experience, and you say, I want to feel it. And then if you feel anything in your body, like shut down, or fear, or contraction, or pulsation, or something like this, that's a sign of repression. So
Mm.
I would suggest to learn some somatic tools, or KI, or whatever, and with a mentor or someone, learn to bring up this unconscious resistance, because
Mm.
100%
Mm.
of KI is working with unconscious resistance. The
Right.
emotions they are not the issue, the problem. They are just those are just emotions.
Yeah.
The unconscious resistance towards those emotions, which are creating even the story or whatever, like anger is bad, for example. Or if I express anger, I'm bad, so I have to be ashamed of myself. That's the
Mm.
story. We
Mm.
can't deny the story because we don't see that that's the unconscious resistance towards the anger, you know?
Right. Yeah.
So I would suggest to learn to be very honest with yourself about your experience, and learn KI or something as a first step to learn to bring up unconscious resistance and connect with the resistance. Trying
Right.
to connect with the emotion while you are unconsciously resisting it
Yes.
doesn't really work. It's like sitting in meditation and I want to allow this joy. while it wasn't possible to feel joy in your family, you know? So there is this joy, I want to feel it and express it, but you just get frustrated because you're not making the unconscious resistance conscious that says, don't feel it, it's not safe.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Or I hate myself, I hate my joy, I hate my femininity, you know? Unconscious resistance, or the unconscious command running in the body, don't feel it, don't feel it, don't show it, don't show it, don't show it, don't show it, push it down, push it down, push it down, hide it, hide it, hide it, hide it. These are all forms of unconscious resistance that we don't see. It's buried. It's unconscious. That's we call it unconscious. You know, we are only aware of the emotion, but we don't see why it makes us uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So trauma responses like shutdown, dissociation, fogging out, or a contraction in the body, or discomfort in the body, or pulsation in the body. These are all signs of unconscious repression, unconscious resistance.
Mm.
And I suggest to learn to make it conscious and connect with that part that's resisting it, because
Yeah.
the emotion is hiding behind that
Mm.
unconscious resistance. And if you can connect with it, you know, with those tools that we have within KI, then you will see then you are going to have a different experience with that emotion, and that's where the compassion comes into the picture, you know. Can you be compassionate with that unconscious resistance, that ugly thing, you know? If I
Yeah.
want to put it like this, I hate my
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know, I
Yeah.
hate myself. I don't want to be joyful because then they hurt me. Like all forms of resistance or
Mm.
shutting down or numbing. I have to numb my feelings. I just have to numb. I have to be numb so they don't see me, you know, like all these forms of unconscious resistance that we don't see.
What can people expect from a session with you? For example, could you describe your work in practice? And if someone is interested in that type of work, how a session with you would look like? What's the process? And yeah, how it all looks like.
Okay, so I provide one-on-one sessions also, and I provide also mentorship. Personal mentorship is a course, like a program.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I recommend to people, because then I can give what you really need to learn KI. Like one-on-one sessions are good for beginners
Mm-hmm.
who are completely new to this, you know. It's very good for those who are new to KI or to somatic work, connecting and getting in touch with the body mind, you know. We have to start somewhere.
Yeah.
So sessions are good for those who come from this place or from this stage, so they can lean into the work and tune into the work through the sessions, to have a few sessions. That's very good. And if after that they still feel like, wow, it just works in my system, KI just works in my system, I feel better, I understand myself better now, I feel freer by doing this work, you know, and if the energy comes up for them, like oh my God, I just want to learn it inside out, it works for me, then usually I say to them, then come to mentorship program, personal mentorship course, because there I can provide everything for you to learn it quicker, in a much simpler way, because only facilitated sessions, they are limited, you know. It's good, they are good to get to know the work and the tools for yourself and to learn it to some degree. But if someone really wants to learn this fully for themselves and to learn to self-facilitate with KI, then I recommend the mentorship course, because the mentorship course provides everything, like an online course that we created, a video course. So even if we don't have sessions or we are not in touch or whatever, you can learn it on your own by going through the lessons and the tools by yourself through
Mm.
this teachable course. So it's very effective that you can like sit with it when you learn
Yeah.
a tool. For example, you
Yeah.
can just play the video, the guided video, and you do it for yourself. Then again, you can listen again, you know, to those videos. And it also provides a community space
Yeah.
that you can, I mean, if you come to mentorship, I will be your mentor. Means I will be mentoring you for you to learn the tools in order to self-facilitate with KI. That's the main goal of the mentorship. So you don't have to rely on me and others for a long time. That's just a phase that you have to learn it for yourself, to embody KI, the somatic processing, making the unconscious conscious. So after a while, you just learn it. It just becomes a part of your consciousness, and then you don't need me anymore, really. So
I love
that's
that.
all with the mentorship. And it's also very supportive because once someone signs up for the mentorship, of course, we are going to have like one-on-one sessions also where I facilitate and mentor you, but I'm also going to place you in a group with all my mentees. And that's the best part of this. For me, that's the best part of the mentorship because it's like a small family or something where we support each other and we share our process. You know, I also share my process with things, you know, and so there is this group dynamic or even like a family dynamic, you know, because it's very deep work and stuff come up for us. And it's good to be connected and supported by like-minded people, I guess.
Absolutely, yeah.
So you can find your friendships, you know,
Yeah.
someone with who you can talk, you know. Yeah, and there are many benefits that comes with the mentorship, you know. And yeah, the other important part with the mentorship, or the very important aspect, that I ask all my mentees to send me a self-facilitation recording every week.
Mm-hmm.
I can listen to the self-facilitation and I can send them feedback, you know, how and where to correct their practice, you know. So it's a quick learning path, you know, with KI and with the mentorship course.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's intense. We are in touch, so you get into the flow of learning and everything. So it's just
Yeah.
much easier to learn it in that way.
Well, it's very deep work. It's, you know, it's good to hear that you not left your own devices until you're really truly learn the tools properly, you know. And I also love that it like you said, you kind of mentor someone until they don't really need you anymore. And I love that because real tools, like real wellness, doesn't end after you finish your 10 sessions or 15 sessions. You know, it's something for life, and it should be for life. It should be available. Like it's sad that there's not more people that know about it or not given access to these tools, because life, like I always say, life is going to happen. We're going to face new situations, painful experiences, you know, and we need to have um something like that to help us through life. And
Yes.
yeah, it's good not to depend on someone for it, but really truly learning yourself.
Yes, yes, that's very important. I think that's why it's very different from other practices for me, because I don't feel like I need anyone. It's not coming from this unmet need that I can't do it by myself. I can't process it by myself. No, I can. I just believed it until I learned to make these unmet needs conscious and the contraction that came with it, you know? So
Yeah.
now it's not there. And I was a very anxious type of people, you know? Some people are avoidant, and I was always like anxious, you know, wanting to connect with people. There were like avoidant tendencies, but this anxiety was always there. I need someone. I have to get help from, yeah. We all have this to some degree, you know, like I
Yeah.
need someone to feel better. I need someone to get help. I need someone. I can do KI on my own. Like I need Scott. Like it was always there, you know. But then gradually I brought it up, these unmet needs, the pain with it, and the unexpressed emotions. And then I could like break up with this tendency, let's say, just by
Yeah.
bringing it into awareness. And then
Yeah.
it felt,
Mm.
oh, okay, I have compassion with that, but now I can do it on my own also.
Yeah.
And we don't deny, you know, that I have my KI friends, very deep friendships. Sometimes I just need to talk with someone, you know, that's
Yeah,
painful
of
stuff
course. Yeah.
coming up. So we are not denying that part. It's very
Yeah.
important to connect with each other.
Mm.
But we also process the unmet need, the deficiency, the trauma with mom and dad, so it can settle after a while, and this self-empowerment can come up after,
Yeah.
as you go with this emotional repression reversal process. And the more you feel it's reversed, the more you feel empowered, and you come out of this deficiency that you always need people for something. It just doesn't make sense after a while if you do this work, you know? You
Yeah.
connect with people from a different place. For
Mm.
example, now I can go and talk with Scott or Toshi or Ina, my KI friends, Jake, and just say like, I'm so fucking hurt. Like this thing is it's so painful, you know, and then it's gone, you know.
Yeah.
But now I'm not going there to be a victim, for example, you know, that I don't know what to do with it and I just want to say it to you because I don't know what to do with it, you know. So it's not coming from that place anymore. It's just expressing it, you know,
Yeah.
but not deficiency and trauma and waiting for someone to help me with this, you know. So it's a
Yeah.
very clear connection and
Yeah. And very authentic as well. Very like you can build more authentic and more real friendships after you know how to kind of not need anyone. I know it sounds a bit counterintuitive, but when you don't rely or depend on others outside yourself, you can kind of create yeah, more real friendships and build more intimate connections and maybe even love more authentically, and everything becomes a bit more real. In more in for the lack of better word, everything in your world, in your experience of this world becomes more real.
yeah,
Yeah.
yes. And for me also, vulnerability and intimacy, safe vulnerability and intimacy makes it really real, you know, because I experience it more and more since I do this work. And I think that was under all the pain and repression that I just really longed for authentic, intimate, vulnerable relationships where I can be vulnerable. But because of my traumas, I couldn't, you know?
Yeah.
And this,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
was always angry and hurt and afraid because I couldn't connect with people from that place
Mm.
of
Yeah.
authenticity, love, and intimacy and vulnerability, something
Mm.
like this.
Yeah.
And now that I experience it more and more, and I experienced that it's safe, you know, it's safe to be vulnerable and intimate with someone and deeply connect. Um, Now I can see that that's what I was longing
Mm.
for
Yeah.
for a very long time. And since I have this experience within myself more and more, I can have it with others more and more, you know. And
Yeah.
that's a
It's so
huge shift, you know, like I wish it for everyone to
yeah.
experience.
Yeah, I know, like I can see in your face, in your eyes, just how much this has had an impact on you and in your life.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
I'm grateful for it actually. Yeah, it's a very
Yeah.
different life and connections with people.
Yeah. One last question. I know we've been talking for a while, but just for out of curiosity, I've been meaning to ask that earlier actually, but it just kind of slipped from my mind. Men and women, do you see from your own experience in working with men and women with emotional repression work, do women and men tend to repress different emotions more than others, than other emotions?
That's a good question. Um, I don't see any particular tendency. It's just repressed emotions in feminine or masculine body.
Mm,
But the programming can be slightly different for
mm,
men and women, but it's still just emotional repression with different repression programs. I think
mm,
it's harder for men to be vulnerable in some
mm,
cases, in most
mm.
of the cases, because of our social conditioning
Yeah,
that man has to be strong. Like you
yeah,
know, these conditions
yeah,
probably
yeah, yeah.
they can't cry. You know, they have to be strong and crying or being vulnerable or even weak for a moment is like death for them sometimes.
Yes.
There is like this social conditioning.
Yeah.
ecosystem, that man has to be strong, emotionless, like well put together,
Mm.
and yeah, maybe for women it's also different. It can be also different. But
Yeah.
sometimes even women, even if it's more accepted for us to cry and be vulnerable, still women have to be strong in this world.
Mm.
So it's
Yeah.
so mixed up these days, I think. I mean, that's what I see.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Serena, thank you so much. Before I let you go, I have to ask you if people want to connect with you and work with you, how do they find you? Where do they find you? How do your sessions, what's the format of your sessions? Can you do online and all of that? Anything you would like to share? I would love to hear.
Yes. We can do it online and they can visit my website and there they find all the information, like literally everything.
Mhm.
And the website is serenasenteshi.com.
Yeah, and then they can connect with you and inquire about the sessions, and you can facilitate different time zones, I assume, because it's all online.
Yes, I work with people from all around the world, from different time zones, so I think it's okay. And yeah, they can just go to the website and book a free clarity call. We can just chat a
Oh,
little bit,
wonderful.
get
Yeah,
to know each other. They can
yeah,
ask questions about the work or myself, they can share
yeah.
a little bit. So the clarity calls are for this a bit of discovery together.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Serena. Honestly, like for being so open and so vulnerable and sharing so much of your own personal experience. It's gold, it's treasure, and I really wish for your work to reach more people, people that need it, people in a place of, suffering and despair. And when they think they've tried everything, but nothing helps, that they, find this emotional repression work because it's truly powerful. And I don't think it's nowhere near enough people that know about it and or talk about it even. There's so many common modalities, like therapy, we train our bodies, we become physically strong, but when it comes to our emotions and repressing them, a lot of people don't even never heard of it. Never heard of it.
We don't
And
even know that we repress them. We just see the symptoms
we just
usually.
see the symptoms.
Mm.
Yeah. So thank you so much for your voice today. I'm so happy we finally made this session happen.
Yeah, me too. Thank you for having this conversation with me. I really enjoyed it. It's really good to be in your presence and just to talk about these
Yeah.
things. Yeah.
Thank you, Serene.